Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. The Jack Zorn Scholarship is named after the founder of Lads to Leaders, who is also a Faulkner alumnus. This scholarship is meant to help address the minister shortage in the Churches of Christ. It provides a completely free tuition to qualified students who are majoring in either Bible or ministry and are committed to becoming a minister after graduation. Applicants who have been accepted for admission and completed all scholarship requirements by December the 15th each year will receive priority consideration. You can apply for this at faulkner.edu and click Apply Now. Faulkner.edu, click Apply Now, or for more information and a review of the requirements, visit faulkner.edu/Zorn, Z-O-R-N, faulkner.edu/Zorn, or contact admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I recently had abdominal surgery for the 8th or 10th time, and in an uncharacteristic mindset, I had quite a bit of trepidation. I'm not really sure where it came from. Jackie and I had some very serious discussions about what she should or could do if I didn't come home from the hospital. We made some arrangements about our finances and about our house, and she learned how to use some tools that she typically doesn't use, and it was just something that I'd never faced before. Now, I'm not a pessimist, but I'm also a realist, and I had two different surgeons tell me this is not going to be a run-of-the-mill thing, and hey, you're this old and you are a diabetic, and your body mass index, that's your weight versus your height, have some indicators there, and there are just some risk factors. And so I went into this thing not really dreading it, but understanding that the other surgeries that I had bounced back from and recovered from, it might not be the same story this time. Now, the comforting part of this whole endeavor was that the surgeon I was fortunate enough to have, and I got to choose my own surgeon, is one of the guys who is also one of our SWAT docs. We have two guys presently that volunteer with us, Dr. Ronnie Najjar and Dr. Mark Eich. They volunteer their time with the tactical team, and they attend training. They go out on warrant services, and they respond to the call-outs. Both of these men are brave, competent, selfless, loyal men. Eich is an ER doc, and Najjar is a trauma surgeon. They have been known to walk down the firing line of the range and pick out our targets and talk about the ones they could save versus the ones that they couldn't save. If you shoot at a target and you put rounds into what they call the cardiac box or the cranial T, we could save that one, or we couldn't save that one. We call it the Najjar Eich lethality scale. Doc Najjar, who's the head of trauma at our local hospital, has a saying that if you end up on his table and you open your eyes, you are either going to see God or Najar. And so, with that in mind, I went into surgery knowing that my future was not in my own hands, and thinking that in either scenario, I woke up to see either God or Najar. It was going to be a win-win. Well, it turns out my procedure ended up being a 6-hour ordeal. I went in about 4 o'clock, and when I woke up, it was well after midnight. I do remember vaguely talking to someone, and it wasn't God or Najar. Probably an orderly in recovery, but at that late hour, I could have just been as easily talking to a custodian. Well, sometime after that, I wake up in my hospital room. So imagine my surprise waking up around 2 a.m. and instead of talking to God or Najar, I was looking at what could only be the Dark Lord of the Sith. Now, his friends called him Darth and his enemies called him Vader. If you've had 6 hours of anesthesia, a dilaudid pump, a darkened hospital room, and across from your bed is a black plastic dome-shaped paper towel dispenser, and that black plastic paper towel dispenser is reflecting red and green lights of a hospital monitoring machines that are behind your bed. It really, really, really looks like Darth Vader. I pointed this out to a nurse, and she said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's not just super unusual that lying there in the darkened hospital room that I'm seeing Darth Vader and having conversations with the Dark Lord of the Sith. You've got to understand, my first exposure to Vader was as a teenager. This is in my formative years, and maybe next to Freddy Krueger, he's going to end up being the only real substantial villain that's ever actually out there with any fearsome clout. Now, I wasn't a comic book aficionado, but I know enough and knew enough to be familiar with all the good guys and all the bad guys. In the DC universe, all the villains are jokes. They are caricatures. They are deformed. They are more to be pitied than they are to be feared. The only bad guy of any substance in the Marvel universe was Doctor Doom. And if you compare Doctor Doom and look at his armor and his cloak to Darth Vader, you will begin to question all the copyright laws of America. Now, later on, there's this big bad guy in the Marvel universe called Thanos, and he's going to dominate popular culture. But again, this guy's just a space brute with exaggerated features reminiscent more of a Batman villain than somebody to be feared. In fact, his name is a play on a Greek word for the name of death, please. And then you look at this guy and with that exaggerated, elongated, striped, folded chin, and no, I didn't see any of the Infinity movies. I couldn't take him seriously because of Thanos. His character is a compilation of either bad writing and worse special effects. It's like he's a recycled version of a Hellboy costume that didn't make the cut in that terrible movie. This guy's chin alone would have made him vulnerable to the guys that I hang out with, and we'd have humiliated him to death. But Darth Vader? Oh, to a 15 or 16-year-old Lonnie Jones, this is a giant in black armor with telekinetic powers and a lightsaber. Dude, that's the stuff nightmares are made up of. And his soul was blacker than his armor. Now, early in the Star Wars thing, the first 3 movies, I didn't respect him. In fact, I kind of hated Luke Skywalker. I saw him as a whiny, unappreciative kid who, had I gone to the same school with him, I'd have picked on him. My guy in those movies was Han Solo. That was the guy. He was a space version of Fonzie and the Lone Ranger with a little Dirty Harry thrown in. He's the blast first, ask questions later. I thought to myself, you give him a shot at old asthma mask and we could end this thing in 2 movies. That was my belief. Right up until those doors opened in Cloud City. And Solo's standing in the doorway and Vader is standing at the head of the table. The room is solid white and Vader's dressed in solid black. Solo reacted with the reflexes of a Jedi gunslinger. He gets 4 rounds off from a Blast Tech DL-44 heavy blaster pistol, only to have Darth Vader block them with the palm of his hand and then force snatch the pistol from his grip. I stood in the theater, my mouth agape, my worldview having been altered. Yes, not only was Darth Vader the epitome of evil, he couldn't be killed with a firearm. That really upset my apple cart. He was truly something to be feared, and he was to be hated because he was feared. But when you're in a hospital room in the wee hours of the morning and there's nobody else to talk to, one's mind can come up with good conversations you can have with a Sith Lord. You can have some surprising contrasted parallels, if you'll allow me to say that, even with the Sith Lord. In conversing with the Dark Lord of the Sith, I discovered or realized the following things. It turns out that Vader and I have had multiple reconstructive surgeries. I like to pretend to open automatic doors in car trunks using the Force. I can see the value of choking people in a disagreement. Or throwing objects in a fight works and is also biblical, asked David. We share the belief that a good sword could solve lots of problems. Both of us have had some problems being loyal to our alma mater and or our mentors. And both of us were seen as villains because of our change in philosophy. Now, what's not a parallel is Darth Vader betrayed both the Jedi Order, Ben Kenobi, and the Emperor. I never really betrayed anyone. I just rethought what some people were teaching and came to a different set of understanding and rules. And because I made that change, they thought I had abandoned them or betrayed them and maybe was labeled a villain because of it. It's not uncommon to outgrow your teacher. And it's not uncommon for your students to outgrow you. It doesn't make either one of you bad guys. I've taken the easy path and oftentimes have believed in product over process in my early formative years. It didn't matter how you got it done as long as you got it done. I believed in power over influence before I matured. I used to have a saying that said, forget the Force, just use force. I often believed my default setting was confrontation. That may be a path to the dark side. I've worn costumes and masks to hide my scars. There have been times in my life I needed help just to breathe. And just because you have a cool mask, just because you wear a cool mask doesn't mean you're not still ugly underneath it. I started out young and innocent, and at times have lost my way. I have misused my natural talents and gifts. I have used my talents and gifts selfishly, and this will always lead to the dark side. You may have this thing that you think is your biggest project, your ultimate achievement, or your ultimate weapon or power. And that ultimate thing that you put all your pride in can blow up in your face because of one small weakness you are too arrogant to address. I've been guilty of believing that because I was hurt, then it's because you hurt me and you wanted to, and therefore we are enemies. I've accused people who were trying to stop me from doing bad and stupid stuff of hating me. It's probably not an apples to apples comparison, but in the Star Wars legend, you have this kid Anakin Skywalker, and he's young and he's cute and he's precocious and he becomes a handsome, talented, debonair young man. Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader, and only a very few people know the truth. The Emperor who corrupted him, Obi-Wan Kenobi, his teacher, who watched it happen, and then his son who believed he could be saved. I was not always who I want to be, I was not always the kind of person I am now. And maybe, just maybe, nobody will ever put the before with the after picture. I'm sorry for some of it. And I'm sorry because of it. And I try to be more different and a little better every day in spite of it. Another thing I learned when conversing with the Sith Lord is that when you change, when you really change who you are, there should be such a drastic transformation that only a very few people could ever know or even believe that the guy you became is the guy that you used to be. The guy that was and the guy today should be unrecognizable. And just like the make-believe story of Darth Vader, I discovered the absolute true story that no matter what I did, no matter how I changed, no matter who I failed to become, no matter how selfish or misguided my behavior was, there has always been and will always be someone who believed I could be redeemed. The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. They aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. Heritage Christian University produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education and offers the following degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and Master of Divinity. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University, formerly International Bible College, has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt after graduation. For more information about Heritage Christian University, visit www.hcu.edu. That's 3 W's and a dot. hcu.edu. Heritage Christian University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.